Alex, this long week is over. Yeah, well timed. Might be the first one of those I approve of. I'm gonna put some lights on here.
Yeah, it's really dark over there. What's going on? You shutting yourself in?
Well, this room I'm in does not get a whole lot of light
Uh,
until about like afternoon, and then
okay.
the way the sun hits the room, the way the sun hits your eyes,
hmm
that's pizza. I'm more at pizza.
Something involving a pizza pie.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
that's how I end all my lyrics.
Are you talking about pizza because they were talking about pizza in the chat before the show started?
No, I'm just constant. That's just a thing that happens in Chicago. You just are
Okay.
constantly thinking about pizza.
I mean, in New York too, it's a different kind of pizza, but you are constantly thinking about it.
Yeah, I haven't had any deep dish pizza in probably a couple of weeks. It's got
Why
well, it's
do
like
you
one of it's
Why
one
do
of
you even
those
live in Chicago?
well, it's like one of those things that now that you're around it so often, you got to limit your use of it, or else you're
Yeah.
not going to enjoy it anymore.
I don't know. I mean, I eat regular thin ass New York pizza on like at least a weekly basis,
I
and
can do that.
okay.
There's something about deep dish pizza because I don't know, it's specialized or just because it's kind of a journey, both in terms of the ordering process, which takes a long time, the eating
Mhm.
process, which takes a long time, and then everything that happens after you've eaten a deep dish pizza. It's a bit of an ordeal. So
It is.
to spread it
Your
out.
body takes a journey once you have like at least a couple of pieces of deep dish in you.
Oh, I don't know how you can eat more than two. Guess it depends on the place.
I don't think I've ever eaten more than two. Though to be fair, the only deep dish pizza I've ever really had much exposure to was a place I'm sure Jeff has yelled at you about a bunch. That old Chicago restaurant in Petaluma, which is I don't think is particularly authentic.
it sounds like a man with few options screaming into the sky about that maybe that's just okay.
Yeah, yeah, that's accurate. Patrick,
Yeah.
how's your week?
I'm tired.
You look tired.
My wife was out of town all week, which usually the weeks where that happens, it's awesome because I just get to spend every night doing whatever I want. I catch up on like documentaries and play a bunch of video games. It's great. Didn't do any of that this week.
What did you
Literally
do?
had well, the mixture of professional and personal. Like Sunday, it's all day Easter fest with, nieces and stuff like that. And then Monday I got to myself, but then Tuesday I went and got dinner with my mom, so I didn't get back till late. Then Wednesday was that garbage show, the unprofessional Chicago. I don't know. I don't like to think about it. I just show up, and
You're embarrassed to even be a part of it, aren't you?
It's Dave Lang's on it. Come on, let's
Yeah,
be reasonable.
yeah.
And and then last night I did Spookin' with Scoops, and then today I have to go to C2E2, which is a convention in Chicago that's like a local comic entertainment convention, and I was asked to share a short 5-minute story on the Nerdalogs panel, which is a comedy musical group that is partially associated with one of the members of Cards Against Humanity. So I just breathless. A lot going on this week.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
about you?
You look out of sorts. I must say, it's unfortunate. I hope like just slap yourself awake. Just give yourself a couple little smacks. You'll be all
Want to just
right.
play some Hearthstone? We'll just play some Hearthstone.
I downloaded Hearthstone. I have not actually started playing it yet,
Hey.
but that is something I intend to do this weekend because I don't know. Did you read Dan Reichert's piece on Hearthstone that he put up this week?
No, was it just like a bunch of farting and wrestling gifs?
No, surprisingly. But
Oh,
it was
okay. All right,
actually
raising his
Dan.
standards.
It was Dan admitting that he had learned something. Uh,
Okay, all right. I
this
do
was
need to read this
apparently
piece.
this was apparently a teachable moment for him because he has spent most of his years making fun of people who play these sorts of card games, digital or otherwise. But after hearing everyone talking about it, he decided to play it, and he turned out he really liked it. And he started talking about how it sort of like broke all his preconceived notions about what these kinds of games are and the sorts of people who play them. It was like my God, like he somehow evolved a little bit and learned to actually accept something that he had this preconceived notion that was just stupid for no reason.
I think Hearthstone is probably a great game to sort of break those preconceived notions. I didn't, I wasn't someone who was making fun of folks for liking those games, but I certainly didn't play any of those games before
Yeah,
I started dabbling in Hearthstone, and I still have so long to go into even understanding basic like mana rhythm.
yeah,
That's a term.
uh huh. Yeah, that term just kind of makes the worst parts of my brain start flaring and make me want to
Mana
not play it.
rhythm.
Yeah, but I'm gonna play it because I downloaded it, and if it can even win over someone as hard edged and stubborn as Dan Reichert, that means there's probably some value to it.
And you know what? You don't know what you're doing. I don't know what I'm doing. That's on. We should play each other in a couple
Yes.
matches and just really just frustrate the internet at
Just
making very obvious mistakes.
Oh God, yeah, no, people will get so angry at us if they tried to watch us play because I'd just be like, "What does this card do?" Plop, and then just the whole everything is bad.
I like this comment from Raziel Cuts. How can a wrestling fan sneer at CCG players? Good point.
That is a totally fair point, and I think that you could really counter just about any of Dan Reichert's brazen, ill-informed
Tirades.
judgments of people with just the response of, "You're a wrestling fan." And as a wrestling fan, that is a completely valid insult. I think that is completely accurate. You can throw that right back in his face. It totally robs him of any of the sting.
Yeah. I have not played a lot of Hearthstone this week. I played a couple of matches in bed before going to sleep. It's like sipping a glass of water and playing because the match is like 8 minutes long, so you can get a couple of them in while you're waiting to go to bed. And so that's what I've done, but I really haven't made significant progress in terms of coming to grips with the game. I feel like it's my own sort of Dota where I know so little about such an established genre that people have spent a lot of time playing and being invested in. But this one does a pretty terrific job of at least making the opening sections feel manageable. Although I've heard from sort of more, not even necessarily high-end Hearthstone players, but players that have played Hearthstone and have played other CCGs, is that while Hearthstone will introduce you to the basic concepts of picking a card and putting it down, the tutorial does a pretty poor job of explaining, when I was, saying, this term like mana rhythm.
Right.
Things that concepts that you need to come to grasp and understand and execute on in order to be successful at playing the game. So that playing the game, not tough. Playing the very basics of the game, not tough. But actually having any meaningful success is going to require knowing more about the game than the game actually communicates about itself. So.
Yeah, I mean, that could be trouble for me because I have a tendency, once I start playing a certain way, and this goes for just about any game, once I get into a certain rhythm, even if it is absolutely the wrong way to be playing the game, I tend to stick with it because I'm super stubborn, and it's hard to get me to try to do different things once I get into a nice little rut. That is sort of what I guess a bunch of people were yelling at me about on that FTL video because I don't pause during combat because I just got used to not doing that. And that was apparently driving people absolutely fucking insane.
Just pause the video in Premiere next time. Just pause.
Yeah. No. This is the way I play FTL. Sorry. It's maybe it's the dumbest way imaginable to play that game, but it's just how I got used to it. So.
Well, that's totally what I can see myself falling into with Hearthstone is, finding a couple of matches where I sort of think I know why I won and just applying those lessons over and over again without realizing they are probably the wrong lessons. But at the same time, when you play a game on the internet that you don't really understand with a bunch of people who like to call themselves experts, the kinds of tips you get from them aren't necessarily tips that are useful for you. So actually sifting through people that want to help you out or people that just want to bludgeon you to death because you haven't gone to becoming an expert after 4 hours of play is a little bit difficult.
Yeah, most definitely. Let's see. This week, what did I do? I went and saw Sportsfriends yesterday.
You did. I saw an email asking for you to come by because that game just made it through CERT, which means it is on its way to release. Even if we don't quite have a date just yet.
Well, apparently we will have a release date for that game later today. They are
breaking sort of news.
Yeah, breaking half news. They will have a release date later today. They just didn't want me to say what it was so they wouldn't piss off Sony. But that's fair. But they showed me the final build of the game, which I think the last time I played it was like a few months ago. I was hanging out with some of the Polygon people in New York, and I was at their office, and they had like an older build on their things. Like, let's just play this because it's here, and that was fun. But getting to see the final game with all like kind of the final art and UI stuff in there, was pretty rad. Like I've always been a big fan of what that collection is, and they have made something real nice and real fun out of that. Um, I think so far Hokra is actually probably my favorite of the games. The one
Yeah, it
that's sort
is.
of like I don't know, like one of the dudes kept calling it, saying it's like soccer, and everyone was saying no, it's like hockey, and he was getting really mad that everyone kept saying it was like hockey. But
Was Ramiro the
it was
one?
Ramiro was saying it was like soccer.
Ramiro's
So
the creator of Hokra, so
yeah,
I'm not surprised he would say that.
yeah. But he, we played a bunch of that. We played a bunch of Bari Bari Ball. We tried to do Johann Sebastian. So we were playing in the NYU Game Center offices or campus or whatever
Hmm.
in Brooklyn, which is where Jeff gave his talk, and I guess that's where they sort of operate out of when they're in New York. So we were trying to play Johann Sebastian Joust in this campus room area, and we had to try to do this in a way that was not super distracting to everyone. So we did it while we were all sitting in chairs,
Okay.
chair rule joust. So like it was just us on these rolling chairs trying to sort of find ways to smack each other while also staying on the chair at all times.
That's actually pretty fantastic.
It's probably one of the better variations of that game. It's certainly better than the variation of put Patrick through the table, like the one time you and I play together.
Oh yeah, when Jeff threw that chair at me
Yeah, that was a really violent game of joust.
with a vengeance. It wasn't like, hey, Jeff's playing it up for the camera. No, Jeff threw a fucking chair at me.
Yeah, like it got a little bit rugged in a way that was probably not intended by its creators, which is unfortunate. But that was what sold me on the game originally. That was what made me go, okay, I don't. Even if these other mini games aren't great, I just want a version of Joust I can play at home. And as it turns out, the other mini games are actually still pretty great. So
Yeah, I think mini game might be a slightly disingenuous term for like they're all kind of complete games, but in this collection,
I
I
call
think
them mini games because there's not really a progression. It's just here are some
yeah,
levels, here are these multiplayer things, just go. I'm not saying that in a way that's trying to diminish what they are. I just think they're smaller games, but they're still super fun.
Bar Ball is probably the most difficult game to
Yes.
grasp off right away because it's the most mechanically complex. The other games you can kind of figure out in an instant. But
Right.
Bari Ball, which is kind of a riff on Super Smash Brothers, but it's its own sort of take on that arena, like 2D arena style. But yeah, you're jumping, you're dashing. There are multiple characters. There are charge moves. You are losing lives because you're falling in the opponent's side, or you're trying to rescue the ball. Like there's a lot going on in Bari Ball. It might end up having the most the game that you'll come back to the most long term. But at
Yeah.
least when you first start playing Sports Friends, Bari Ball is kind of difficult just because it's hard to figure out what's going on.
Yeah. And what's the? I can't remember. I can never remember the name of the fourth one. Pole Riders, Super Pole
Super
Riders.
Pole
That's what it
Riders.
is. That is also super. Like I don't know. They're all really fun, and I also got to see a couple of secrets, including
Ooh,
a perhaps a fifth game that is actually a
really?
very mini, very small little secret thing, but is still pretty cool. Which I won't spoil what it actually is for anyone. It's just that there is still other stuff hidden in that game that is pretty cool. Playing the final build was super fun. I am really looking forward to when that comes out. And it is coming out very soon, so that's exciting.
Yeah, it's coming out on PS4, PS3. I don't know if the PC and the PC and Mac and Linux versions coming out at the same time as everything else.
No, they are coming out later, but not like crazy later.
Hmm.
So, but I believe it is coming on the PlayStation platforms first.
Because for Joust specifically, that's a game that I want to play in an outdoor space. That it's like kind of the ideal scenario for that. Playing that in my living room seems less appealing, just because
Yeah,
I've got things people can bump into, and it just doesn't seem like the right spot to play that game. It'll probably work for some people, especially if you've got a house. Like if you have a whole downstairs like big ass living room, I could see why the game would work. But it's not really going to function for my apartment. But I have to imagine Sports Friends will probably run pretty good on my laptop. If for nothing else, then to allow me to bring like my MacBook Air out to. There's a couple parks in our area, so like take that out with a pair of speakers, like some USB speakers, and then play that while everyone eats some food, drinks some beers. That sounds like
And
that sounds like a
inevitably
good way to kick
injures
off
each
the
other
summer.
on the concrete, like just
It's
accidentally knocks each other.
There's grass,
Okay. All right.
the park.
Uh, the one thing I will say about Joust is that they've added, and this is like a really minor thing, but I kind of love it, is they've added little character animations that play for each person on the screen while you're doing the jousting. And obviously, no one's really going to pay attention to that while people are trying to smack controllers out of each other's hands. But
Yeah.
like even the UI in that game and like the art is really nice. It's all really simple stuff, but it all looks super clean, super nice, and the stuff they've added I think adds a little more personality to that game than was already, I mean, Joust by itself was pretty rad, but it's cool that they've added some stuff to it to make it, kind of look a little nicer.
Yeah, and I'm just glad it's finally coming out in a form that isn't little builds of the game just being passed around in secret so that
Exactly.
people can play it, which has kind of been what's happening now. Because it is a terrific game, even if it's sort of years after people really heard about it, and probably in a more ideal scenario, a game like Joust was able to capitalize on that a couple of years ago. But it's finally coming out. People will be able to use all sorts of different devices to interact with it. I know that at one point there were talks of doing an iOS version, at least of Joust, so that you could use like your iPhone and iPad as the
Right.
device. But that seems like a really fast way to have people get upset at you because you created a game that's going to cause a bunch of phones and tablets to break.
Yeah. I think that's one of those ideas that sounds great for about 5 minutes until you actually realize what's going to come out of that. I mean, say what you will about those fucking Move controllers, they can take a pounding. Like they're cheap plastic, but they manage to stay together. I don't think people's iPhones would fare so well in that situation.
The 3 Move controllers I have only been used to play Joust, and that is it.
Yeah, they might as well just call them Joust controllers at this point, because why
Pretty
else
much.
would you have them?
I,
On the PS4, you can at least use the DualShock 4 instead of the Move controllers, because they have that tech built in.
oh,
So
that's cool.
yeah, we were just playing with DualShock 4s, and that worked just fine. So other than that, been just kind of I've been going through this project of trying to clean up my home office as much possible, and
Mm.
been uncovering a lot of really random pieces of junk
Yeah, you've
related
been
to video
tweeting about
games.
some of them.
Yeah, like I found this, which was a thing I forgot even like existed. This Rock Band Mad Catz bass guitar, which has this
Right.
dual strum bar right here, which you can do the two-finger thing if you want to.
I had one of those, and it made playing the bass sections of Rock Band way more fun.
Exactly. Yeah, it was kind of rad, and no one bought them, as far as I
No.
know. Like they were very poor selling item, as many of the later day Rock Band hardware things were. But finding that actually got me to play some Rock Band 3 for a while, one of the evenings this past week, and God damn it, I really don't want to get back into another hole where I'm just playing that game every night again. But I mean, I could almost see that happening.
Yeah, I still need to. I keep kicking around. I'll kind of just be looking on eBay, and I'll be hovering over a buy it now button where I reviewed that game back when I worked at EGM, and man, I loved that keyboard. Like, there's something about keyboards and synthesizers that there's an alternate life where I was somewhat talented and was able to actually play one of those things. But Rock Band tricks you into thinking you can do stuff like that, and I really enjoyed the keyboard support in Rock Band 3, and so I've always wanted. I should just download or buy one of those. But the problem is then I have to hook up a 360, which
I've kept my 360 hooked up, just so I could play stuff like South Park or whatever else, whatever few games still come out on that platform. But also because I don't want to lose access to, the thousands of goddamn songs I've bought for that game. Like, even if I'm not playing it right now, I want to have that stuff available in case, I feel like playing it again. Because Lord knows that stuff's not coming out on any other platforms anytime soon, so might as well just keep it around.
no.
Yeah.
Did you find anything else interesting in your garbage dump adventures?
Yeah, I found the vinyl copy of the Starsky and Hutch game soundtrack that I think
Yep.
both Ryan and I had. I found a fake vinyl, which I was hoping was the actual MGS3 soundtrack, but it was actually just a piece of fucking cardboard with this like CD attached to it that just has the Snake Eater theme on it,
Aw.
which is sort of dumb. So I threw that away.
Did
I
you
found
are you one of those people that got the like fake snake in a can
I
promotional
didn't.
item?
That did come to our office. That didn't come addressed to me. I think Ricardo got that and hoarded it, as he did many other things. But yeah. Um, yeah, it's mostly just like a lot of like shitty press kits and like just so many thumb drives. Oh my god. I have like an entire drawer of just promotional thumb drives with, like assets from like Namco games from 2006 on them.
You should take all those thumb drives. You should download some sort of geocaching app. You should
Yeah.
drop them throughout the city and then upload the map for people to go find them.
I don't understand how any of that works, but yes, okay, that will be
Do you
the
know what
next thing.
geocaching
I
is,
know what
right?
geocaching is. I don't know how to do any of it.
Oh, it's not that tough.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll
Says
learn.
the guy who's never done it.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure you'll figure it
It
out.
seems
Yeah,
like it
sure.
can't be that hard, though. Come
No way it's
on.
that hard.
Come on,
Uh,
dropping off of like a 2002 Namco Bandai USB, that'd be amazing. Come on.
yeah. Well, to be fair, I already threw away three-quarters of them,
Oh,
so
God damn it.
I kept a few of the ones that had larger file sizes on them. But other than that, this week we did finally record another movie podcast, me and Rory.
What? Oh no, I'm sure
Yeah.
that the GarageBand must have crashed.
No, it didn't. Skype didn't break. Nothing broke. We actually got through an entire like hour and change podcast with no issues whatsoever, which is kind of an amazing thing when it comes to me and Rory. So that I think will be up later today if you want to.
What'd you guys talk about?
Oh God, what did we talk about? We talked about Captain America. We talked about a couple of the movies that I've been very slowly catching up on the movies that got nominated for Best Picture this year. So I saw Nebraska. I saw Her a while back. So we talked about some of that. Yeah, just kind of catching up on the long list of random movies we've watched over the last several months since the last one we recorded.
Yeah.
And I think we got some good discussion out of it. Unfortunately, our True Detective discussion from the last time we tried to do this is probably lost to the ages. But short version, I thought that show was pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's pretty
ended
chill.
weird. Pretty good show overall.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Why listen to 40 minutes of that when you could have just said that?
yeah, that was basically what it boiled down to. So but yeah, that was my week more or less. Video games.
I finished Halfman Hero 2. I don't have much to say about that except that game should not have been 18 hours long.
Was it? It was really 18 hours long. That
Oh, yeah.
game.
Oh yeah.
Oh man, that feels like something that someone would have said. What if we made this game, and it was like a 20-hour RPG, and that sounds really funny until you actually do it, but they just somehow kept it going. They just somehow made that a game.
Seems really antithetical to the idea of the game making fun of games being JRPGs being long. Thus, it has 30-second quests that you play, and it goes on for 18 hours. And whew, it does not have enough satire to support 18 hours. But I have a real problem with putting down games once I start them. And I also was just not convinced it really could be 18 hours long. Not convinced it could be that long. And
Are you
yet,
convinced now?
like, yeah. It might have actually been 15 hours, but I might have, my Steam counter sometimes is a little weird, but whatever. It was like 10 hours too long. That game was
Right.
maybe should have been 5 hours of fun, and it was 5 hours of fun with 10 hours of stop.
That's really- That's
and I
really
didn't have to
rough.
review it. I'm just a monster to myself.
Yeah, I don't know. You gotta learn this thing that I've learned, which is that when you're playing a game, and even if you don't like it, if you're not reviewing it, you can just stop.
I can't do that. Unless it's
I've started doing
tremendously bad. If the game is tremendously bad, then, well, I'm probably not playing it to begin with, but if the game has something that interests me, I really like to see things through. It bothers me to not finish a game. And I'm not even paying for these games necessarily, but there's just something about not finishing it that really bugs me. It extends to all media that I engage with. I watched all of Prison Break
Uh-huh. Why?
because I really liked the first 2 seasons.
Okay. But then, when did it go sour for you? When did you start to realize that maybe Prison Break was not going to be
Third
great?
season, and it went on for like 4 more.
Okay, so there comes a time in everyone's life when they have to
Uh-huh.
reassess what they're dedicating themselves and their time to. And if you don't like something, if it's not going in a direction you don't like, if it's going in a direction you don't like, you can just stop.
Yeah, but then
Go.
I start thinking about, well, this has gotten so bad. I have to see how bad it gets.
No, you don't. No,
Mm,
no, you do not actually have to see that.
mm, I don't know.
Look, this is what got me to watch Lost for 6 seasons, and you
All
know
right,
what?
hey, hey.
Hey, all right. Yeah, no, I'm half joking. Um, but no, you don't need to be dedicating that much time to stuff that just isn't doing it for you. Like, did you think Half Minute Hero was somehow going to turn good after 12 hours? Like, it was somehow going to fix the repetitiveness and the sloggy nature of it? Like, that was just gonna like the last 6 hours. That's when it's gonna get great.
No. I just have to finish things. I don't know. Maybe it's what, maybe I have the same compulsion that, I make fun of Vinny because he collects so many things in games, which I find to be utterly crazy to
Sure.
go after collectibles in the way that he does. And maybe I just have the same compulsion when it comes to finishing games.
To have
There is a
therapies for
little bit
this.
there is a little bit of that of oh, well, maybe it turns the corner at some point. And the one way I can counter when I would have a discussion with someone, whether it's a colleague or a user on the site or just some random fan of games, like if they can suddenly say, "Well, man, if you had just gotten to this point, then the game is friggin' amazing from that point on," and by finishing it, so I cut off that being a point of discussion.
Sure. That said, when it's just for your own time and your own sanity,
Mm.
I have learned to just excise things that are not doing it for me any longer. Trials Fusion. Had fun with it for a few hours, hit a point where I wasn't having fun with it anymore. I'm done. Not playing anymore. Done with it.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm not actually doing anything better with my time, but at least I'm not focusing it on a game that I'm not having fun with anymore.
I suppose so. I suppose so.
I could watch so many more taped episodes of Jeopardy now that I'm not playing a game I'm not enjoying anymore.
Like on actual VHS tapes?
No, no, just like on
Mm,
DVR.
that's unfortunate.
I went and worked out for the first time this week because I had so many hours free.
Hey,
Yeah,
way to go.
yeah, I hurt so bad right now.
Nicely done. Good for you.
Yeah, oh
It's
god.
just getting warm enough that I can start running outside again.
Yeah, yeah, I need to start exercising, and this weather change seemed like the perfect opportunity to finally make good on that. So, because at this
Yeah.
point, I have the body consistency of the Pillsbury Doughboy.
Mm.
It's just softness all over. I'm basically a walking pillow.
That
That's not
sounds.
okay.
Laying with you must be wonderful then.
Yeah,
Like a
no, I
big
mean the
pillow.
girlfriend loves it, but
Mm.
in terms of my ability to lift anything at all, it's not great. So we're gonna work on that.
So I played Fract for a little while as well. I finished the first section of that game, or what feels like the first section of that game. There's a quick look up on the site. Fract OSC. It's a game
Yeah.
that I've been talking about for what feels like years, because I believe it actually has been years. It's a first-person exploration game with a heavy emphasis on music, specifically synthesizers, being a huge part of that world. In fact, it really honestly feels like the synthesizers power the world. Like it's kind of the lifeblood of what's happening in this space that you get dropped into. Mechanically speaking, the game is largely looking at pretty neon things while synthesizers pump in the background, and then coming up to puzzles where you turn knobs in order to get energy to flow in the right direction. I'm sure there are some other puzzles. There are different puzzles where you're trying to get doorways to open at the right beat. So you'll
Hmm.
kind of have what I'm sure there is a technical term, but there are blocks, and you drop beats on the blocks, and then that determines when the music kicks in, and then that determines when the doors open. The game just does a wonderful job of incorporating the music into the puzzles, so that it just feels really cool to interact with the worlds. The puzzles
Yeah.
themselves may not be the greatest things I've ever encountered. We're not talking, Jonathan Blow levels of puzzles or anything like that, but the sheer interaction with the puzzles is just incredibly gratifying, because even when you're not doing them right, you're making some really kick-ass music to go along with it. And as you solve puzzles, you unlock different pieces for the studio, and the studio is a easy-to-use, fully functional music creation tool that also allows you to export the music and share it. I believe there's a thread on the Giant Bomb forums where people are exporting their fracked creations, and yeah, I got some real problems with the way the game communicates what you should be doing,
It kind of doesn't, right?
which is to say it doesn't
Yeah.
communicate a whole lot. You often feel lost in a way that, you know how when you would play Fez and you'd try and look at that map and figure out what the hell you were supposed to be doing or where you should be going, and you just realize that map was completely worthless?
Yeah, that was kind of what drove me away from Fez a little bit. So yeah.
It sometimes feels that way in the world of Fract, where it's hard to tell if I'm just not interpreting what the world wants to communicate to me,
Mhm.
or if the game really is just as aimless as it wants to be. So it can lead to some frustrating moments where I'm just not quite clear on the direction I should be going, and I know that based on a map I've pulled up that I only have one more puzzle to solve in this area, but I have no idea where to go, and getting around is kind of a lengthy process. There's a fast travel system, but even during the fast travel system, you are going on these rails that are kind of slow across the world, and it's when you know where you're going, it's terrific because the world looks fantastic and you're experiencing all this music as you go through it. But it's when you realize, oh no, I went to the wrong section, and then you
Right.
try and figure out where to go next. That it can be a little bit frustrating, but it's supremely interesting game. And if you're like me, where you are just obsessed with synthesizers just an insane degree, it's a really interesting experience. I recommend it.
Yeah, I downloaded it and I literally messed with it for like 15 or 20 minutes just to kind of get a sense of what it is, and I definitely want to play some more. There's something to be said for a game that is very much not about holding your hand and just about letting you kind of explore and experience whatever it has to offer without, trying to direct you too much. But there is a line where that does become just sort of confusing and a little bit frustrating, and it sounds like maybe it crosses that line at least just a little bit.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. It's really hard to tell because I don't, like you said, I don't want to criticize a game because it's not holding my hand.
Right.
But there's a fine line between allowing the player to experience the world for themselves, to pick up on subtle cues that guide them in the right direction, and just being a little too obfuscated to be enjoyable.
Yeah.
So, I've always figured it out. I haven't had to resort to asking people what to do or looking at YouTube videos or anything like that. But there are moments where it feels like I kind of want to put down the controller because exerting the energy and the trial and error to figure out where to go next, I don't know if I want to do it. So,
Yeah. That's fair.
but
That's fair.
when you pull off some of the puzzles, when the world, like, you'll solve a puzzle and then just the world will just change around you in the most interesting and psychedelic fashion, and the music is blaring as it goes, and like there are sick bass synthesizers in this game. I cannot underscore how sick the bass is in Fract, and like having a good
The
sound
sickest of
system.
bass.
Yeah, a good sound
Yeah.
system or some good headphones on while you're playing this game. Goddamn, it is
Okay.
satisfying when just everything shifts around and it is just thumping over and over. And it's not like club music. It's like that. It's a thick molasses synth, and it's just
Mm.
it's tasty. It's a thick
Mm.
molasses synth,
Making
classic
me
synth.
making me turgid over here. Damn, it sounds real good. Yeah.
I recommend Fract. It's interesting, and I'm enjoying it.
I think I haven't played enough to really get to the sickest of bass yet, but now I want to get to that.
Yeah, some
So,
sick molasses basses. That's what you're after. Fract has got
bass
it.
so thick you lose your shoe in it. All right, yeah, I'm into it. I'm into it. The great Boston bass disaster of 1906.
Keep going.
You remember you ever heard of the molasses disaster?
I have.
Yeah, yeah. All right.
So that's all the games I've been playing. I have not played a lot this week, unfortunately. I'm hoping to get back on the video game train next week.
Yeah, I downloaded more games than I actually played this week. So,
There's a lot coming out next week. I am
There is.
psyched and terrified for Child of Light.
Yeah, that game has looked so good for so long. I'm almost a little terrified that I won't actually enjoy playing it, but it looks cool.
Yeah.
Like the gameplay seems like it'll be fun.
Yeah.
But there's always that worry, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's written by the guy who did Far Cry 3. Did
Mm.
not care for a lot of parts of Far Cry 3's story. But we'll
Yeah.
see.
But tonally, this could not look more different, to be
Oh,
fair.
no, no.
So,
I'm
just,
the visuals alone are going to get me to download that game and check it out.
yep.
I am just utterly terrified because I want to like the game. It's one of those games that it's like, man, I really want this to be one of those games. I really want this to be one of those games. And it's going to be a real bummer if it's just about the visuals. But,
Yeah.
what are you going to do? What else? There's something else that comes out next week, right?
Mario Golf World Tour is
Mm-hmm,
out on May
mm-hmm,
2nd.
mm-hmm.
That I actually kind of want to play because I am actually a fan of the Mario Golf games. I have not played one of them in a long time, so this might be the time for me to finally jump back in. Also,
Yeah,
Kirby Triple Deluxe.
I have that on my 3DS. I'll play that this weekend.
Should play some of that.
I should look at
Uh,
whatever the embargo is, but yeah, they weirdly sent that game like a month in advance. Like, here's an eShop code. It's like, what? What? Okay.
well, I mean, hey, who's complaining? That Amazing Spider-Man 2 game is out for everything except Xbox One next week.
Did they say, has any explanation come out for why that is?
Not official, no. Just we don't know when it's going to come out, and that's kind of that. So
Weird.
Daylight also out next week.
Oh, right. That's the one I was thinking of.
Yep.
Damn it, another horror game. I'm not convinced that one's going to be any good, but because the setup for Daylight is that it's sort of randomly generated. So every time you go in, it's supposed to be a slightly different experience, so that you know, depending on the player, you're not going to get exactly. I'm sure there are like story beats that connect the tissue of the game, but that there's some randomization to the actual experience, and that just I think it's an interesting concept. But my experience with the horror genre is that it is at its most effective when it is an authored experience. It's one of the few genres where being handholdy is kind of part and parcel, because to set up scares is so specific in terms of how you need to frame the player and subvert expectations, and it's a kind of genre that doesn't work very well when the player can, things can shift around. But we'll see. I'm curious to see how that works. This is also one of the first games that is going to bridge into allowing Twitch players to interact with the experience, so players can trigger certain things to occur in the game through the Twitch chat. I don't know if that's just on the PS4 or if that's on the PC as well, because it's easier for me to stream that stuff on the PC. But I need to write Atlas today to see if I can get a copy of that game, because I want to check that out for next week. I'm intrigued, but I'm cautiously pessimistic about how a game with random elements is actually going to pull off being scary. But hey, if they can do it, would love to see them try. So
yeah, for sure. That's pretty much it for next week. Raiden 4 for some reason is coming out on PlayStation Network for PS3, but no one would care about that besides me. I think I'm the only person who still enjoys like Raiden bullet hell games, but I do. So, yay.
So let's see. Mad Max was delayed to 2015 this morning.
Huh.
Which is an odd time to announce such a delay. Was that game supposed to come out this summer or something? I don't think so.
It's so, considering they've shown almost nothing of that game yet, there was no way that was going to come out this summer. That was not going to happen.
I hope this is just getting delayed because Avalanche is just so excited to announce Just Cause 3 at E3 this year.
Oh,
if nothing happens at E3 except that we get a new next-gen focused Just Cause 3, that's it. E3 has been won. We have all been satisfied. Right, because, my God, I could not be more excited for a Just Cause 3.
That would be great. Yeah, honestly, as much as, an Avalanche-developed Mad Max game sounds pretty good, a Avalanche-developed next Just Cause game sounds way more
I know!
Good. Yeah!
That game still looks great. Just Cause 2 still looks fantastic. The idea of unleashing those crazy people on new hardware.
Sounds so good. Sounds like such a good idea.
And it's been rumored for a while. the king of finding games and information about games that are unannounced, Superannuation on Twitter was implying that that game should probably get announced at E3. So you should follow that guy on Twitter if you don't. He is a treasure trove of fantastic insider information. Um,
That guy would make a really terrifying PI because his investigative talents and determination to get the exact information he wants are unparalleled.
when we were at when I was at EGM, the idea had been kicked around that wouldn't it be great if we got him to be the new Quarterman?
Yeah,
He seemed like the modern equivalent of that character, but
that would have been great. But
never.
now he has his own column on Kotaku. So
Yeah, well, see, wouldn't have wanted to become involved in in that dark place I was at. So
say no more.
It worked out.
Understood. Let's see what else is in the news. Hey, Patrick, there's a new Fatal Frame coming.
Oh yeah, for the Wii U.
Yeah.
Which I am tremendously excited about. It was one of the games when the Wii U was announced that seemed to make, and the games that make the most sense for a control scheme don't necessarily work out to being the games that, in practical implementation work out all that great. But
Certainly.
the idea that a camera game with the Wii U gamepad
Mm-hmm.
seems like it would be fucking awesome.
Yeah, and I mean,
like it would be great.
the Fatal Frame series has always been pretty great. It's one of the few survival horror franchises I've ever had much affection for, and I like you said, mechanically it makes perfect sense on the Wii U. Apparently, there have been a couple of them that have come out only in Japan in the last several years. But,
yeah, so Nintendo has this special relationship with Tecmo, specifically regarding the Fatal Frame franchise.
Yeah.
Where they commission and seem to fund new Fatal Frame games. There was one that came out on the Wii that is in English. I believe it came out in Europe.
Yeah, it did.
And then Fatal Frame 2, I think, was also remade for the Wii. Fatal Frame.
I think that is also correct, yeah.
And it only came out in Europe, and the Wii was starved for goddamn games in the US in the later years of its life. And for whatever reason, they just never brought that game over.
To be fair, the Fatal Frame series has never been a barn burner in terms of sales in the US, regardless of platform.
Put it out on the eShop. That costs you not literally nothing, but basically
close to
nothing.
It. Yeah.
Oh, that was endlessly frustrating to see a game that was translated and they just refused to bring it out. Oh.
Feder Dave asked, when was the last time either of you played a game on your Wii U? That is a good question. While I was cleaning the other day, I found an incredibly disgusting layer of dust on my Wii U gamepad, so it's been a while.
I put down Super Mario 3D World. I beat it, obviously. I reviewed it.
Yeah.
But I want to play through that game, get all of the collectibles, and get the incredibly hard stages. And I want to play more of Donkey Kong, because I enjoyed what I played. So I have a special place in my heart for games that I can play while watching football on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're really into football, basically your Sunday disappears.
Right.
It's at least the entire afternoon, and now that I'm on Central Time, you're on the East Coast. Some of those night games really can eat up your entire day, especially if you're invested in those night games if your team is playing.
It's like 11:30 when those are over.
Yeah, it's really late. It really eats up your entire Sunday if you're committed to watching and tracking the entire league. So I like to have games that I can play during those times, and that's where I finished all of Super Mario 3D Land, where you had to finish the game a second time with Luigi and get him to the top of all of the poles in order to unlock the secret stage. So my plan is put aside both those games and then play those when football season starts up in September, because there just aren't that many games that you can kind of casually play on something like the Wii U gamepad and still pay attention to what's happening in football. So I'm saving both those games for September.
Fair point. What else is in the news? You probably have some interest in this. Andrew Groen's book on EVE Online, which went up on Kickstarter yesterday, has already pretty much been funded at this point.
It has, yeah. He asked for very modest, I think $12,500, and It's already been funded. Yeah, Andrew is a guy that has done a significant amount of EVE Online writing over the years, as have I, and he became so fascinated by the concept that he started the last 6 months or so since the Penny Arcade Report went under, which he was a regular contributor for, researching a book about the history of EVE Online, but not about the history of the development of EVE Online, the history, the player history of EVE Online, what the players have done in EVE Online, and trying to write a book about the major wars and alliances and different events that have occurred since EVE Online came online so many years ago. He's a perfect fit. You know, I've loved the stuff I've written, but Andrew is an expert when it comes to stuff. I've constantly referenced his material when I've been writing my own stuff about EVE Online, and in fact, the last EVE Online piece I wrote, I can't even remember the terms that I would say, but the last one I wrote, it went up on the site, it did very well. I was working on putting together that piece, and then had heard at Max Temkin's birthday party that Andrew was interviewing some EVE Online folks. I got panicked, thinking that he was working on some sort of piece about the same epic battle, so I rushed to get my story out. Because I was afraid he was going to get one out before me and kill it. But as it turns out, I was all for naught because he was working on a separate book project. But yeah, it's what's the Great Empires of EVE Online. It should be a fantastic book. You should. It only costs a couple bucks to get a digital copy, and it sounds like he's investigating getting a nice hardcover one now that he has another 30 days on his Kickstarter, or 29 days, or whatever it is. So. You know, he actually took a really interesting approach of having just 2 tiers.
Yeah.
He didn't make it complicated. He made it real simple. He set the goal really low just so that he could make sure the project got funded. So it sounds like he's going to do it, which I think is the right way to do it, which is to start adding additional tiers now that interest has been secured, and now he can start investigating what would people want and do that over the life of the Kickstarter. So I'm excited. I backed it. You know, I don't have any trouble backing reporting enterprises as opposed to Game One. So if you're interested in that, I think it's going to be great.
Yeah, I'm backing it today as well, even though it's already hit its mark. Because I mean, whatever. I want to buy a copy of it. I want to actually, like read the damn thing. Like that is the stuff about EVE that is always super fascinating to me, and I love the approach that he's taking to it. It's a really like the campaign page, like everything he wrote up for it, that video he put up for it, like all really smart, well done stuff. Like I think that he nailed the way that was presented on Kickstarter, and know I'm trusting him, to turn that into a good story. I think that's going to be a really good book.
Let's see. Not a whole lot else going on the news front. It was a pretty
light week,
pretty slow week. Let's see if we got some questions worth bringing in. Lawsbub says Mario Golf will feature a season pass. Thoughts?
Do we know what's in that season pass? Like what content they are planning on delivering?
And I actually think that's an important point, is that the season pass does... I'm pulling up an article right now.
Okay.
This one's not very specific. Anyway, I read the press release at some point. The season pass specifically points out everything you're going to get with the season pass. So if you're going to do that, I think that's the smart way to do it. I didn't blame people for feeling burned with, for example, the BioShock Infinite season pass, where you bought into a season pass thinking, hey, I want more narrative content for BioShock Infinite, and the first person DLC was arena multiplayer, which by all accounts seems like it was well made for what it was, but that's probably not what most people were buying into when it comes to a season pass for a BioShock game. So I understand that maybe stuff isn't built when these games go on sale, but giving people a better understanding, a very specific understanding of what they're getting for the season pass, I think if you're going to do that, that's the healthiest way to communicate that to players.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I at this point will not buy a season pass unless I have at least an upfront idea